"Take your hand off my fiancé," Rachel Porter said, and 200 people watched a dead woman walk back into Julian Ferraro's life. Vanessa Holt jerked away from Julian as if the voice itself had struck her. Executives stopped mid-toast. Guards shifted toward Rachel. One trustee whispered, "She's confused." Rachel crossed the ballroom in a dress, alive, plus size, steady, and carrying an audit folder. Vanessa slapped her. Rachel caught her wrist. "Try that again, and I'll show everyone why my authorization appears 46 minutes after the crash that killed me." Julian went still. Rachel opened the folder. A Ferraro Reserve instruction glowed on the page beneath her name. "This payment chain is active. If anyone leaves before it's preserved, the evidence can disappear." Peter Langford moved toward the doors. "Julian, she needs medical attention." "No," Rachel said. "I need the payment queue frozen." Julian looked at the woman he had mourned, then at the Alliance guests whose money and loyalty depended on this night. Canceling the event would cost him cover, business leverage, and the Holt partnership. He did it anyway. "What do you need from me?" he asked. Rachel's throat tightened. "Preserve every active instruction. Then let me speak." He obeyed. Only after the doors locked did Julian ask, "Why did you let me bury you?" 3 weeks earlier, Rachel had seen 6 kinds of fraud disguised as paperwork, but she had never seen one freight invoice claim 2 different midnights. The invoice sat beside her coffee in the Ferraro Holdings conference room. Ordinary until she compared the port code to the timestamp. Before midnight, the shipment belonged to Pier 12. After midnight, the same shipment carried Pier 9's code, yet both entries shared one authorization sequence. That could not happen through normal processing. Rachel called Miriam Shaw. "You're supposed to be planning a wedding," Miriam said. "I am. I'm planning not to marry into an audit failure." Miriam laughed, then softened. "And after the wedding," Rachel glanced at the offer letter tucked beneath her laptop. Senior Independent Portfolio, her name, her clients. Still mine. She wanted marriage to enlarge her life, not blur the edges until every achievement looked borrowed from Julian's name. That evening, Vanessa raised a champagne glass at the engagement dinner. Rachel has always been remarkably confident for someone who never cared about fitting the room. Rachel smiled. "And you've always cared so much about fitting the room that you forgot to ask whether you deserved the chair." Julian's mouth almost curved. Later, he found Rachel back at her laptop. "You're reopening the audit. I'm refusing to certify something I can't explain. 3 days before our wedding. Fraud has terrible manners." He pulled out the chair beside her instead of arguing. Rachel showed him the duplicated posting. "Same invoice, 2 midnight codes, 1 authorization. Either your system rewrote time, or someone made this look legitimate after the fact." Julian studied the screen. "That code only generates from the reserve ledger." Rachel looked at him. She had not told him which system she suspected. He leaned closer, not touching her. "You found the midnight switch." It was not praise that unsettled her. It was precision. Rachel closed the compliance report without signing it. "I need reserve access." Julian's expression changed. Not surprise. Recognition. "You already know what I'm going to find there," she said. And for the first time that night, he did not answer. Julian reached for the file. Rachel closed it beneath her palm. "If you start dragging people into rooms before I finish tracing this, I'm done." His eyes lifted to hers. "Someone used your authorization, which is exactly why fear helps them, not us. People delete things when they panic. They rehearse stories. They warn whoever is above them." Julian leaned back. "You're asking me to let a threat stay inside my company. I'm asking you not to destroy my evidence because you hate waiting." That earned a shift in his expression. Years earlier, 3 Ferraro teams had blamed a 6-figure discrepancy on theft. Rachel had found a duplicate freight posting created by a midnight port code change. "Your people are looking for a criminal because they're afraid to tell you the software is wrong," she had told Julian then. He had shut down the process, corrected the system, and asked her to stay. Now he looked at the file under her hand. "What do you need?" "Read-only reserve access. Independent copies. No intimidation. For 48 hours. Why 48? The disputed transactions enter next compliance cycle after that." Rachel nodded. "Fine. My condition." She waited. "If you identify someone as dangerous, you tell me before you meet them alone. That is not permission to follow me everywhere. No, or put armed men outside bathrooms." A flicker touched his mouth. Noted. She should not have found restraint attractive. Unfortunately, she did. Julian slid an access token across the table. "You'll see everything." Rachel took it, giving him something in return. The ability to know where she would go if the trail became dangerous. Neither mentioned what they were withholding. Rachel had already seen a trust linked to her family. Julian did not tell her Peter Langford had designed Ferraro's emergency continuity authorization, a safeguard allowing critical payments during system lockouts. Rachel opened the reserve ledger. Her breath stopped. Her own authorization sequence was already there, not once, 11 times. She turned the screen toward Julian. Whatever had begun as an accounting discrepancy had crossed into her name, her reputation, and now her life. The first fight of Rachel's investigation was not about stolen money. It was about the armed man Julian had stationed outside the bathroom. Rachel returned to the conference room and pointed toward the hallway. "He goes." Julian looked up from the 11 false authorizations. "He stays. Then I leave." Rachel folded her arms. "You promised security, not surveillance. I am not spending 48 hours asking permission to wash my hands." Julian's instinct showed in his stillness. Close exits, control variables, keep her where danger could not reach. Then he exhaled. "One guard. You know his name. He stays at the elevator unless you call." Agreed. It was a small compromise, but Rachel felt it. He had listened, and more dangerously, she liked how seriously he took the boundary. They returned to the ledger. Harbor Civic Consulting had collected 9 payments for port efficiency analysis. Rachel searched its payroll filings. Nothing. No employees, no office lease, no operating expenses. "Paper company," Julian said. "Not enough." Rachel compared routing numbers. "Look here." 3 payments had passed through an account also used by a Holt family charity. Julian's expression hardened. "Still not enough," Rachel warned. "I know." That answer affected her more than anger would have. Instead of summoning anyone, Julian gave her another untouched ledger. Rachel traced the transfers until Harbor Civic became provable fiction, not suspicion. Their first win destroyed the comforting possibility that the discrepancy was accidental. Near midnight, takeout cartons replaced half the files. Rachel caught Julian watching her highlight a payment trail. "What?" "You get quieter when you're angry." "You get quieter when you're breathing." His laugh was brief and unexpected. Then Julian asked, "Why does this matter beyond the audit?" Rachel glanced at the wedding seating chart beneath the folders. "Because after we marry, I don't want every room assuming you gave me whatever chair I'm sitting in." His humor vanished. "I would never ask you to give up your work. I know. That isn't the same thing as the world knowing." For once, Julian had no immediate answer. Then he said, "When I can't control what is around someone I love, I expect something to happen to them." Rachel looked at him. There it was, wearing authority's clothes. She closed the ledger. "We're done for tonight." Julian glanced at the clock. "You're going home?" "No." She took his hand and led him into the empty ballroom reserved for their wedding. "We are practicing one dance before these criminals steal the week." His hand settled at her waist only after she placed it there. They moved badly at first. Rachel stepped on his shoe. Julian accused her of fraud. She laughed against his shoulder, and for 3 minutes the investigation stopped owning them. Back upstairs, Peter Langford was waiting. He laid a report on the table. Rachel's credentials appear throughout the suspect chain. She should be removed from the review. Rachel spoke first. "Verify me." Peter blinked. "Excuse me?" "Don't trust me because I'm marrying him. Check the timestamps." 3 authorizations had been issued while Rachel sat beside Julian in documented meetings, including one recorded by building security. Peter's argument collapsed. Julian turned to the finance director. "Preserve every affected record under Rachel Porter's audit protocol. No alterations without her approval. Public trust, not romantic defense." Rachel felt the distinction. Later, Julian offered to send her home under guard. Rachel looked at the ledgers, then at him. "I'm staying." This time, proximity was her choice. She reopened the trust file. Behind its final layer waited a beneficiary name she did not need a spreadsheet to recognize. Julian was still holding Rachel's hand from their unfinished dance when Vanessa Holt's name appeared beneath the trust. For one suspended second, Rachel saw only the letters. Then the rest of the page sharpened around them. Harbor Civic, the Holt charity account, the reserved transfers, and now a beneficiary linked directly to her sister. Julian released her hand only because Rachel reached for the keyboard. "Don't call her. I wasn't going to." "Good." She followed the trust backward. The pattern changed meaning as she worked. Vanessa's charity connection was not incidental, and Rachel's stolen credentials were not random camouflage. Someone was building a record that would eventually make Rachel look responsible for the entire theft. By morning, Peter was calling it coincidence in front of 6 Ferraro executives. Rachel turned the monitor toward them. "Coincidence does not route money through 3 entities and return it to the same beneficiary. And it does not borrow my authorizations 11 times. Peter smiled thinly. "You are very close to this personally." "So are you. You designed the continuity system." That stopped him. Julian looked at Rachel, then at the finance director. "Every affected payment remains frozen unless Rachel clears it." Nobody challenged him. Rachel felt the authority land differently from praise. She belonged in them because she had earned the decision. Later, behind the closed doors of Julian's office, the victory felt less clean. "We should postpone the wedding," Rachel said. Julian's face gave away nothing. "Do you want to?" "I don't know." "Then we postpone." No anger, no argument, no reminder of guests, money, or reputation. Rachel stared at him. "Just like that. It is your wedding too." The freedom in the answer frightened her more than pressure would have. She crossed the space between them and kissed him first. Julian touched her face gently, waiting until she leaned closer, before answering the kiss. For a moment, neither fraud nor family nor fear had ownership of him. Then Rachel stepped back. "I'm taking an encrypted copy to Miriam. I'll send someone. No, I'll call when I arrive." He disliked it. She saw that. But he nodded. Rachel left with the drive hidden inside her bag. 20 minutes later, her brakes failed on the descent toward the river. Her phone connected to Julian's voicemail as the guardrail rushed toward her. "Julian, someone close to you is—" Metal screamed. The line went dead. Rachel woke to hear Peter Langford's name outside the clinic door. Pain arrived in pieces. Ribs, shoulder, throat, then memory. Rain against glass. The guardrail. Julian's voicemail cutting off mid-sentence. a nurse whispered beyond the door. Langford said nobody connected to Ferraro can know she survived. Rachel stopped breathing. The second voice answered. Payment already cleared. She closed her eyes before the nurse returned and kept them closed until the room emptied again. On the bedside tray sat an itemized clinic receipt. Most of it meant nothing until one reference code caught her attention. Q7, the same vendor, hidden inside the Harbor Civic transfers. That changed everything. Peter had not merely known where she was. Someone using his financial architecture had paid to keep her here, alive and unreachable. Rachel wanted to call Julian so badly her hand trembled around the borrowed phone. Then she remembered Peter standing beside him in board meetings. Remembered private ledgers only Julian's circle could access. Remembered how quickly Julian could close a door around information and call it protection. And Julian had never shown her where his protection ended, and the machinery surrounding him began when he was afraid. If Peter worked for Julian, calling him could finish what the crash had started. Rachel called Miriam instead. By sunrise, Rachel Porter was dead to everyone who mattered. Ray Holloway checked out of the clinic 2 days later, wearing borrowed clothes and carrying photographs of every billing record Miriam could obtain. Julian, meanwhile, refused the accident theory before investigators finished their first report. He froze internal access, restricted conversations, and ordered Ryan to trace every person who had touched Rachel's last known route. Then, he made the mistake his fear always made for him. He told almost nobody what he was doing. Vanessa remained close because Julian wanted her observable. Peter remained close because Julian wanted him comfortable. To Rachel, watching from outside, it looked different. Photographs appeared from charity dinners and waterfront meetings. Vanessa, beside Julian. Vanessa entering Ferraro offices. Vanessa under headlines announcing a strategic Holt-Ferraro alliance. Rachel knew the wording mattered. She knew photographs lied, but old wounds were efficient interpreters. Maybe she had been tolerated because Julian loved her. Maybe once she vanished, the room simply corrected itself. At night, she remembered their unfinished dance and the way he had said, "Then we postpone," when she questioned the wedding. He had given her a choice then. She could not give him trust now. Instead, she followed. Q7. Over 3 months, Miriam helped her map the clinic payment through 2 accounts until it reached a reserve channel Peter controlled. Julian, working separately, proved Rachel could not have initiated the stolen transfers. 2 investigations moved toward the same truth, without touching. Neither saw the continuity authorization waiting beneath it. On the 91st day after her crash, Rachel bought a prepaid phone and dialed Ryan DeSantis. He answered on the 4th ring. "DeSantis, Ryan." Something heavy crashed to the floor. Then silence. "Rachel." Ryan's first useful sentence was also the one Rachel had spent 3 months refusing to hope for. "He never believed you stole from him." Rachel closed her eyes. Ryan kept talking before courage failed him. Julian had traced the false authorizations, isolated Peter's access, and kept Vanessa close, because he suspected both of them. He had never accepted the theft story. He had never accepted the crash as an accident. Rachel could have sent the evidence anonymously. Instead, 2 nights later, she walked into the Holt-Ferraro Alliance gala herself. Now inside the secure financial suite, Julian stood across from her while Vanessa and Peter waited under guard. "Preserve the room," Rachel told him. "No phones, no destroyed documents, no violence." Julian looked at Ryan. "Do exactly what she said." Rachel placed her external money map beside Julian's internal access file. Their hands nearly touched. "I thought you might have known I survived," she said. The words hit harder than accusation. Julian did not defend himself. "I made everything secret because I thought secrecy kept you safe. From outside, that probably looked exactly like guilt. Rachel swallowed. And I treated having the right to leave like I had to face everything alone. For 3 months, each had protected the other by removing choice. They changed the rule. No protection decision affecting the other would be hidden when disclosure was safely possible. Neither would force the other out of chosen risk without first asking for the plan. Julian opened his complete investigation file and slid it toward her. Immediate proof. Together they froze the shell accounts, revoked Peter's access, flagged Vanessa's trust assets, and proved Rachel's credentials had been used after her crash. Her professional innocence was finally undeniable. For one fragile moment, Rachel believed they had won. Ryan leaned over the terminal. Then explain this. A fresh authorization had appeared 11 minutes after Peter lost access. No one had logged in. Peter had not touched the system after Julian revoked him, which meant the system was obeying an order he had given before Rachel came back from the dead. Rachel pulled the authorization history up. This wasn't created 11 minutes ago. It was released 11 minutes ago. Ryan frowned. Difference? Everything. She enlarged the sequence. The instruction had been pre-approved, weeks earlier, under Ferraro's emergency continuity protocol, designed to keep critical payments moving if normal access was frozen. Peter had planted the order while he still held legitimate authority. Rachel's stomach dropped. We triggered it when we froze the accounts. Their victory had opened the final route. Vanessa's face changed before Peter's did. Julian noticed. Rachel turned to him. Show me the Holt agreement. He did not ask why. He opened the file and handed her the tablet. No engagement clause, no marriage language, only an alliance, temporary shared access, and controlled financial cooperation. Rachel looked at the photographs she had spent 3 months hating in her mind. Vanessa, beside Julian. Julian never touching her. Ferraro assets migrating away from Holt-linked accounts. You kept her close because you suspected her. Yes, relief hurt almost as much as grief. Julian did not reach for it as absolution. That does not make what I hid from you acceptable. Rachel looked back at the screen. Peter and Vanessa were still guilty. Their objective had been larger than escape. Force Ferraro's emergency pathway open during the Alliance event. Complete the theft and leave Rachel's credentials attached to the authorization. The queued settlement flashed red. Midnight clearance pending. Rachel shared every step aloud, instead of disappearing into the problem alone. Julian listened. Then he asked, Do you still want to finish this with me? Yes. The bank's compliance officer appeared on speaker. You have 18 minutes. With 18 minutes left, Julian finally possessed the one thing he hated most, a problem he could not solve by taking control. The secure financial suite had become a sealed arena of screens, ledgers, guards, and one red countdown, advancing toward midnight. Peter stood near the conference table, under Ryan's watch. Vanessa remained beside him, pale but composed. The instruction is valid, Peter said. You can arrest me if you like. The bank will still honor it. Rachel ignored him and rebuilt the transaction chain aloud. The continuity order already passed preliminary authorization. Revoking access cannot kill it. Freezing the shell accounts forced the system to reroute through Ferraro reserves exactly as Peter intended. Vanessa smiled faintly. Then there's nothing left to do. Rachel looked at Julian. There is. She opened the validation screen. The originating reserve has to fail compliance before settlement. That means the bank needs the complete reserve ledger, including the port payment relationships behind it. Ryan went still. Those records would expose arrangements Julian had protected for years. Covert waterfront revenue, political favors, and financial pathways never meant for outside review. Julian's attention stayed on Rachel. What happens if I release them? You lose 2 routes immediately, probably the council relationship tied to Pier 9, and outside compliance will have authority over Ferraro Holdings afterward. Peter laughed softly. He won't do it. Rachel did not answer for Julian. That mattered. She could have uploaded the files herself once Julian gave her access. She could have forced the moral choice and called it necessity. Instead, she turned the screen toward him. "This is the plan," she said. "No hidden step, no sacrifice you didn't agree to." Julian studied the countdown. 13 minutes. "Is there another way?" Rachel held his gaze. "No," he nodded once. "Then tell me what to open. Not take over. Not move her aside. Not demand an alternative. Ask." Rachel directed him to the reserve archive while Ryan repositioned security exactly as she requested, keeping Peter and Vanessa separated from the terminals without touching the evidence. Vanessa's composure finally cracked. "You think this proves something?" she snapped at Rachel. "The moment his power is threatened, he'll remember what you actually are. You mattered because he chose you." Rachel entered the final validation code. Julian authorized the ledger release. Nothing she could have said would answer Vanessa better. Bank compliance received the reserve records. The queued payment turned amber. 5 minutes. Rachel linked the false authorization sequence to Q7, then to the clinic payment, then to Vanessa's trust. Peter tried to interrupt. Julian said only, "Let her finish." Rachel did. At 11:59, the screen changed. Pending became blocked. Peter's face emptied. Vanessa stared at the confirmation as if the system had betrayed her personally. Outside investigators now had a complete evidentiary chain. The money stayed put. Rachel's name was cleared. Julian had won by making himself less powerful. The room exhaled. He looked at Rachel, grief and hope stripped of strategy. What happens to us? Rachel loved Julian enough to know that going home with him that night would be the easiest mistake of her life. "What happens to us?" he had asked. Rachel looked at the blocked transfer, then at the man who had surrendered part of his empire, rather than ask her to betray herself. "We don't pretend surviving fixed everything." Julian absorbed the answer without bargaining. By morning, investigators had the records. Rachel's name was cleared. Peter's access terminated, and Vanessa's trust assets frozen pending prosecution. Ferraro Holdings lost 2 waterfront routes before lunch. Julian did not hide the damage. He created a compliance committee, separated reserve authority from his control, opened audits to outside review, and surrendered his ability to override those safeguards. Miriam accepted a seat as an advisor. Rachel did not. 3 weeks later, Porter Forensic Accounting appeared on a second-floor office door overlooking Boston. The lease was hers. The clients were hers. Julian had paid for none of it. That evening, he stood in her apartment and asked, "Come home." Rachel's heart answered before she did. "No." Pain crossed his face, but he stayed where he was. "I love you," she said, "but I won't return because danger ended. I need to know the life I choose is still mine." Julian nodded. "Then it is." He left without sending guards back. 4 days later, flowers arrived with a card. "Dinner Friday. Only if you want." Rachel laughed and texted, "Yes." Dating Julian Ferraro proved difficult. His idea of casual required private dining rooms, and his first attempt at security ended with Ryan knocking over a water glass while pretending not to watch them. But Julian learned. He asked more, assumed less. Rachel stopped treating every compromise as surrender. Months later, she attended a Ferraro corporate event as an outside consultant. Someone smiled at them. "So are you officially Julian's bride again?" Rachel looked at Julian. He hasn't asked. For once, the most controlled man in Boston looked nervous. He took her hand only after she offered it. "Rachel Porter, will you marry me?" She let him wait 3 seconds. "Yes." This time the word belonged entirely to her. 6 months later, Julian waited outside Rachel's office, because the meeting behind the glass belonged to her. Porter Forensic Accounting gleamed across the door while Rachel finished with a client. The meeting ran late. Julian did not send Ryan inside, call twice, or invent an emergency. He waited. When Rachel emerged, Julian held up 2 restaurant menus. Italian or Thai? Her phone buzzed with a wedding planning message, asking whether they wanted extra security around the venue. Julian glanced at the screen. "What do you want?" Rachel smiled. Months ago, he would have answered before she finished reading. 2 guards, outside only. Done! Another message arrived from Ryan. Venue accountant found a tiny discrepancy. Rachel stared at it, then turned her phone face down. "Tomorrow," she said. Julian offered his hand. Rachel took it. Her name remained on the door behind them. Tonight, for once, dinner was the only decision that mattered. Rachel's journey was never about proving that she deserved Julian's love. It was about realizing that love could not substitute for autonomy, professional identity, or the right to make her own choices. She survived betrayal without changing her body, abandoning her work, or becoming harder just to feel safe. Julian changed too. His greatest act of love was not protection, revenge, or power. It was learning that trust requires disclosure, consent, and the courage to let someone choose freely. Their partnership became stronger only when neither person had to disappear inside the other. That truth reaches beyond romance. Healthy love does not erase independence. It creates room for 2 complete people to stand together. What mattered more to you? Rachel returning from the dead, or Julian learning to surrender control? If you enjoyed their story, share your favorite moment, subscribe, and join us right here for another intense Mafia boss romance.